Hi everyone, I'm Riya from Hyperbots, and I'm very excited to have Mike Vaishnav join us on call today. Mike is a CFO, consultant, and strategic advisor to many privately held organizations. The topic of discussion is PRPO processes. Let's jump right in. To start off, could you explain the difference between PR and PO processes, Mike?
Sure, Riya. Nice to be here. So PR and PO process are extremely critical for any procurement function, just to make sure the company has the proper control, authorities, and then how the goods has been ordered or service has been ordered. So let me start with the PR. The PR is a purchase request, which is an internal document prepared by the internal management to make sure that all those goods and service you want to order, they have like properly approval. So there's a workflow on the PR approval where they properly approve those who is approving it based on the hierarchy, based on the limit, and what is the requirement. Because we do not want the company to approve everything which is not required and create the over inventory or over services type of thing. So PR is a process where there are multiple level or multiple cross-functional team or collaborate. It's a collaborative approach where people can approve the various things based on their hierarchy, and it all depends on the cross-functionality also. So once PR has been approved, which says what are things what you want to approve, what are the items you require, what are the proper approval has been there, if the budget has been okay for the specific services or goods, and what is the requirement. So once you do all those things, it is like internal documents that's been approved and goes to that becomes PO. PO is an external document, which is a kind of commitment from the company to procure certain item, either goods or services, and it's a kind of what you call is a confirmation of the order. That document, purchase order document or PO, is sent to the vendors, and it's a kind of legally binding document. And based on when vendor will receive the PO, they will start processing the PO. They will process the PO and ship the goods or provide the services based on the pre-approved services or pre-approved goods. PO will include everything like what's the quantity required, price, who's the vendors. There's specific everything, so there's no confusion what they're ordering or what is coming up. So that's the kind of PO is more on the legally binding document. And so kind of is like, if I say in a simple word, PR is the initiation of the purchase versus PO is a confirmation of the purchase.
Right. So, how do the distinct PRPO processes help in maintaining compliance and risk management within the procurement function?
So PR and PO process create a structured control and a transparent environment to maintain the compliance and risk management. If I go on the compliance management side, and if I focus on the purchase PR, it's like authorization or approval. It's a compliance from that perspective that the company is authorizing after having a proper approval that this is the service they want to order or goods they want to procure. And based on that authorization approval, that company can order. The other thing I would say compliance management is segregation of the duty. So what happens if sometimes somebody wants to order it, that person may not have a full authority to order beyond certain threshold limit. So it requires multiple approval. So in that way, compliance can be done and there is no misappropriation of the funds or over inventory issues. And then this is also documentation and the audit trail. So that will show that what is documentation, what's the audit trail, and who has approved it, what the person's limit would be. Now, if you look at on the PO side, what is the compliance? It's a contractual compliance. As I said in the previous question, that it's a contractual compliance in a way that here we are sending the proper approved PO to the vendor, and vendor is it's a commitment. So vendor is going to send it based on what's the purchase order, what's the quantity we need to order. So that's more on the compliance and the commitment side, or maybe what you can say is a legally binding agreement between the vendor and the company. It also shows the enforcement of the procurement policies. So PO is based on the various enforcement of the procurement policies. What are the policies has been there? Does not only include the policies for the internal policies, but also for the external policies, and also whether we are complying with the local regulations, if any, for the certain types of procurement. And it's also for the tracking and reporting, because once you order this thing, you can track what's the status on the vendor side, whether vendors have shipped the goods, whether we received the goods. So this on all in the compliance side. If we are talking from the risk management side, you can focus on the risk management side. PR is a pre-approval. So it's kind of, it mitigate the, or as I said before, it's over mitigate the risk of the over ordering and mitigate the over commitment from anybody, because the PR people will look what's the budget is there, what's the requirement would be there. So there's no risk management on there. The other thing is also on demand verification, that whether what type of demand we have it, and based on the previous purchase request, before it goes approved, they will make sure that what they need, it needs to be approved. And also from the budgetary control, that there is no risk involved, because it's already been, when PR has been approved, people who is approving make sure that this has goods or services a proper budget. So that's kind of risk, mitigate the risk of overspending or going beyond the budget. And then when at the time there is a like higher spending than what the company has budgeted for specific item. If you look at from the risk management from the PO side, it's more on the contractual obligation. So it's kind of vendor will not ship anything or any over quantity or different price, because everything has been mentioned in the PO. There is no risk of making changes on the quantity or price or time of the procurement. The second thing would be the supplier's performance risk. There's also when we ship the PO to the supplier, making sure that suppliers has been fulfilling the requirement, fulfilling the whatever their obligation would be, so there is no further risk involved. And then also the financial and operational risk mitigation. So when you receive the goods, or a good, then what happened that you match the two-way or three-way match. So you match with the PO with the goods receipt note, or PO with the invoices. So sometimes whatever the price, whatever the quantity has been shipped, has received based on the PO, and supplier has invoiced based on the PO. So there is no risk of any financial or operational risk of receiving over or under quantity and paying more to the vendors. So these are the critical things for the compliance and risk management side.
That's very interesting. Thank you for elaborating. So, can you elaborate in what ways can PRPO processes improve efficiency and speed in procurement operations?
For the purchase request or PR, is some of the automation of the approval. So it's approval based on the workflow. So if you have proper system set up, then based on the workflow, based on the hierarchy, based on the approval authority, the PR has been approved it. So in that way, it creates more efficiency and you don't have to do the paper shuffling of that. It's also standardization of the request. So people know what they're approving it, what they're ordering it. Also the efficiency from the budgetary control side, that they are ordering based on the budget. Also, again, it's all centralized information, because people who are approving it will go based on the workflow. So people can see what the centralized information is there, how they can keep the proper audit trail of that. Other thing also create the operational efficiency, because PR, when it's approved by the multiple people based on the requirement, is mitigate the risk of the over ordering, either it's a goods or services. And it's also collaborate and validation of the orders, that what's cross-functional, what needs to be ordered, what is the inventory required. And there are quite a few times, sometimes people will have create the higher purchase requirement, and they based on the certain threshold, they can open up the PO. So in that case, what happened that if the company may need let's say 5,000 quantities, but if they don't want to order everything, they can approve the PR for the 5,000 quantity and then create the predetermined criteria based on the threshold, and they can convert into the PO. So that in that way, when there is a critical requirement, you don't have to go through the whole process flow approving and create them more efficiently. And also it makes help to making the inventory management at the same time. Also, if you are ordering any services, it's also create the control on what kind of services you are ordering. So these are more on the PR side. PO side is one of the biggest operational efficiency would be the standardization of the internal and external policies. Because PO, before you send it out to the vendor, making sure that it's complies with all those regulatory compliance if required, if any, plus they are compliant with the internal policies. Again, this is an external process, so it's making the more collaboration with the vendor and making sure that vendor are on board with what we are sending out the PO. Also, speed of the ordering. Because sometimes you need something, and if the PO is there already, you can give it to the vendor and you can get the orders pretty fast versus waiting for ordering and at the time of when the real requirement would be. Also, it helps for the order tracking, inventory management, and also some of the vendors' KPI also that how the vendor is performing, whether they have shipped, they have made their commitment. So all those KPI would be there. And then last but not least is also help the accruals. So at the month end, when we have to do the accruals, easily done with the open POs and what are the open POs are there. Based on that, we say how many has been ordered, whether it's received, especially this will help more from the service side than a goods side, because the goods side you already have the product goods receipt note, so based on that you can accrue it. But for the services, sometimes you don't know what other service needs to be done, needs to be they have performed the services, and if there is a open PO, you can manage the PO based on the services what required, and say if there's already been performed, you can create the accrual for that.
Right. So, for better understanding, Mike, would you like to highlight what are the key challenges faced by organizations that implement PRPO processes and how can that be mitigated?
So PR and PO process can introduce several challenges. With the proper planning, implementation of the technology, and process optimization, this could be mitigated. So let me give you some examples of that. So one of the biggest challenges is the process and approval delay, rigid workflow, how the process has been created. Some company has a pretty rigid workflow. Some company has a like long process flow. So that can create the delay in converting PR into the PO and also sending it to the vendor. So what are the things you can do that? You can streamline the process, like streamline the workflow, whether what type of approval required. When there is a critical approval or critical inventory you want to order, you may require multiple approvals. When you have certain threshold, you may require multiple approvals. But every time you don't have to go through the multiple channels for the approvals. So you need to have a flexibility on the approval. There are also another challenge you can have it that there are people dependency. So if somebody is approval and that person is on a vacation or traveling, you cannot get the approval done faster, and that will delay the operations. In that way, your process workflow should be more flexible and making sure that if that person is out, either they can give the authority to somebody else or the process flow can be changed after proper approvals. So that's one of the challenges. The second one I can think of is the complexity of the implementation. The implementation in the sense from the process and the system. There are quite a few times, there are multiple systems. There are quite a few times people will use the what you call the external solutions for the PR and PO, which may not be integrated with the ERP system. In that way, it would be very difficult to integration with the system that could create the challenge, data integrity, as well as the delay in the process. The thing how we can mitigate is a simplified automation, communication, proper training, and process, making sure that systems have the proper integration of the systems. As I said, there's also integration of the system can be mitigated with the how the your ERP is working, whether your ERP is able to, if you have like off ERP solution, then whether can ERP can integrate with that. If not, then you need to create certain process in making sure that if this system has been integrated. There are quite a few times the other challenge would be when you send it out to the vendor, the PO, vendor may not have that capability of accepting the PO online. So that can create the delay. So we need to making sure that vendor has a like proper system setup, or whether we have proper API to doing in and out of the documentation. In that way, it creates the more efficiently. The other option would be like in the current environment, AI is another good optimum option where you can implement the AI, which can mitigate the problem of the some of the system issues as long as AI solution has been integrated with your ERP systems. The other challenge is the compliance and enforcement with the internal and external policy. The internal policy, we need to make sure that people, when they approve the PR, it can be they're following the policy based on the hierarchy, based on the approval limit, based on the what is the key requirement would be. And then external policy, you need to focus based on the what is the regulation, local regulation, government requirements for certain orders. So this challenge can be mitigated by the enforcement of the compliance, proper risk management, training, communication, and monitoring all those policies and making sure that people are doing proper compliance. And another thing I would say is the scalability. So if the company has a solution, if company is growing pretty fast and company is not the solution which can grow with the company faster, then that could be a biggest challenge. So you need to make sure that the system should be pretty flexible and agile so that making sure that the company will grow, you do not face all these challenges of the growth and then mitigation, growth and then complexity of the growth.
Absolutely. And can you tell us what are the key challenges your organization faces with the current procurement process and approval, and how do these challenges impact the operational efficiency and project timelines?
So there has always been challenges in the approval process, and quite a few times I can give you some of the examples on that. But sometimes it's based on the workflow, how it's created is a lengthy approval time. So if the approval time would be lengthy, that creates the multiple layers of the approval, and that creates the sometimes critical timeline can be impacted when there is a critical requirements of the goods or services. The lack of transparency is not. There are a lot more collaboration required between the cross-functional department to confirm what the priorities and when we need to order. If the collaboration is not there, that could be another challenges. If the company has not a good system and doing the manual process, that's always can delay the overall processes. The budgetary constraint and compliance. So if you do not follow the budget, or if you do not have sufficient budget, or if you have a budget but it's not, you order something above the budget with certain authorities, then it can create the more overrun of the cost. That could create operational inefficiency. The supplier management. So we need to manage how the suppliers are well equipped, how the communication with the suppliers, what's the system with the supplier, whether supplier is sufficient goods in inventory or not, and how quickly that suppliers would be able to fulfill the requirement. Even if you have a good PRPO process, that's also how timely communication with the suppliers is very critical. So these are some of the challenges. You can say there are a lot more challenges. I'm just going very high level on that. But there are, if you think about how you can focus on the efficiency, impact the operational timeline, project timeline. So number one is very critical is inventory procurement, because if you have production going on, if certain inventory you will not receive, that will delay the overall process, overall production. And that production, if you do not commit to the customer in timely manner, it will impact the customer relationship as well as the impact on the overall revenue. So that's one of the biggest operational efficiency you're talking about. Project timelines, as I said, part of the operational efficiency. If certain projects you need to finish in a timely manner. Now, if you do not finish in a timely manner, that creates a complexity on the project, meeting the project, whether it's a new product introduction or existing product manufacturing, or there's some of the critical service you require. The other thing I would say is the cost control. So how it creates the cost control would be that if there is a PI and PO process delay, and then you need to have a rush order, so you have to pay extra money for the expedite shipping. You have to pay sometimes extra penalties. Vendor can charge the premium because you are going to them with the last minute, I need certain products. So these are the things you can focus on that will impact the operational efficiency. And other thing I would suggest that how quickly organization can respond to the needs of the internal and external. So including the internal customers like production department or the products who want the services, but how quickly they collaborate with the vendor. If there is no good collaboration between the internal and external people, that creates the issues with the operational efficiency. So these are some of the examples I gave which create the operational efficiency if you don't have good process on the PR and PO process.
Thank you for sharing your insights today, Mike. It's been a pleasure discussing the crucial aspects of the PRPO processes with you, and I'm sure the viewers agree with me. Have a great day.
Thank you. Nice to be here.